We turn now to the U.S. Energy Secretary, Chris Wright, who was here with us on Bloomberg TV and radio. Mr. Secretary, we appreciate your time, and we have much we want to discuss with you. But if we could begin with the catalyst for the move today, should the global oil market be concerned about a potentially disruptive major event in the Middle East?
Well, Iraq is a very large exporter of oil, so that's definitely going to get the attention of the marketplace. But one of the things that's so fortunate about today is the United States is just by far the biggest producer of oil in the world, and we're a net exporter of oil. Doesn't mean the market's unimpacted by Iraq, but that 5% move might have been a 15% move if you were in a place where U.S. production was modest or declining. But we're a large buffer in global markets.
Well, it's interesting. We heard that forecast from the EIA just yesterday, Secretary, that domestic crude production will, in fact, decline next year for the first time since 2021. I don't know what that means for drill, baby, drill. But what does it mean for jobs? Will there be job losses surrounding this decline?
Well, I mean, that's a projection. We don't know what's going to happen next year. The last few months, we've seen weak oil prices for a few months. And if prices are too low for economic incentive, you'll see some drilling reduce on the margin. I think it's unlikely you'll see enough reduction in activity to actually see a decline in production next year. But that really comes down to what oil prices are over the next 6 months and how producers decide to deploy capital. Everything we're doing in this administration is making it lower cost for them to drill wells and therefore a lower threshold at which they would start to pull back activity.
Well, I ask, when you combine it with all the cuts to clean energy tax credits, do you end up with fewer energy jobs than when the administration started?
Well, look, I don't think so, but I don't think the goal is not to create jobs in any particular industry. The constituency of this president is the American economy and the American consumer. You know, when about 1% of Americans work in oil and gas production, 100% of Americans consume oil and gas. But no, I'm pretty bullish about the economic outlook and the outlook for the energy industry in this country.
Well, what about the outlook for what you were just discussing, actual crude prices? Goldman Sachs, I don't know if you've seen, did an analysis on the president's social media activity and specifically his commentary around oil, and it found that he prefers, or it seems he prefers, oil prices between $40 and $50 a barrel. Mr. Secretary, I don't know if you have thoughts on that specific analysis, but has the president expressed to you a specific price which seems ideal to him?
No, I mean, I've heard the president's comments. I think what you hear from the president is a passion around lower energy prices are good for Americans. And he's 100% right on that. What Americans care about is the bills they pay. What's the price of gasoline? What's the price to pay my heating bill or fill my truck, or the price of diesel? You'll see all of those major energy prices, certainly fuel prices, are down from when he was inaugurated. And in fact, they're down even more from when he was elected, which started to send the message that there's going to be more production in America and therefore lower prices. But the marketplace sets supply and demand price. More production puts downward pressure on prices.
Mr. Secretary, Kayleigh started our conversation by asking you about what's going on in Iraq right now. And I know as you join us live here from the Energy Department, part of the focus that you have at this time is refilling the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. Is the $2 billion in the House bill that's moving to the Senate right now enough to refill the SPR?
Oh, not to entirely refill it, but it's enough to start. The first expenditures we have to do is to fix this Strategic Petroleum Reserve. We've got over $100 million of damage because it was drained so quickly in 2022, not for strategic reasons, but for political reasons. We've got to repair the facilities. That's going on right now, and this will allow us to finish that repair. And we have to cancel already agreed additional oil sales. So that's the first use of money. And then with the additional funds, we'll start refilling it. But no, it's going to be a multi-year process to refill the SPR. But we got to work on that every year. Every year we're here.
What is the timeline for the repairs specifically? When do you expect that to be completed?
We hope that most of the repairs are done by the end of this year. They should be done by the end of this year, and we should be able to fill all 4 of them.
Interesting. The president has talked a lot about managing inflation by way of energy prices. He's pleading on one hand with the Fed chair to cut interest rates, but in the meantime, part of the thrust, and you've delivered this message to us before, Secretary, is if you drop the cost of energy, everything else tumbles. Where will be the cost of gasoline this summer as people prepare to travel?
Well, I mean, the price of gasoline today is, I think, about 10% lower than it was a year ago, and hopefully it'll stay around where it is today. I mean, this is the season of higher gas prices, as you just mentioned, because we're getting into travel season. In inflation-adjusted prices, this is the lowest gasoline price we've had in 20 years, except for that brief blip during COVID. So hopefully we'll keep prices around where they are today.
I'd like to ask you, Mr. Secretary, about an announcement the department made today for 20-year contracts that were just signed with JERA, which, of course, is a massive Japanese purchaser of LNG. 20-year agreements to buy LNG from the United States, which, according to the release from the department, will sustain 50,000 jobs annually. How do we go, though, from sustaining jobs to actually creating them? What size deal would that need to be?
Oh, I think that was meant to say create and sustain. Like, there's a lot of new construction that'll be required on these tens of billions of dollar projects to expand these facilities. And then as you sign contracts to export more natural gas, means you've got to produce more natural gas. And the supply chain involved in that production spreads over more than 30 states. But I think if we can pass the one big beautiful bill and solidify through administrations the ability to do efficient approval of LNG exports, I think you'll see many, many more large signings and deals like this for America to supply energy to our friends and allies abroad.
Well, we'd like to hear more about that, because obviously lifting the ban on LNG exports was extremely important to you at the Energy Department. What other kind of parties are you talking to? What kind of deal you have for us next?
We're looking across the world. I think European countries are buying more and more LNG from the United States. We're trying to fill that hole from Russian gas that got pulled away. I met with a large group from India today. I think we'll see increased U.S. LNG supply to India all along the Pacific Rim in East Asia and Southeast Asia, which is economically the fastest growing section in the world. What's great about natural gas is it's the fastest growing energy source on the planet. So there's the greatest demand growth for new supplies of natural gas, and the U.S. is the largest supplier of that by far.
Secretary, thanks for joining us. Chris Wright, Energy Secretary, with us live in Washington. Thank you for the conversation.